tonight. Sex offenders in exile, the cost of war in Yemen, and the street artist trolling Hollywood.
If Meryl Streep, if she didn't know what was going on, then she's a dumb bitch.
Starting tomorrow, China will exert more of its influence as North Korea's biggest trading partner and cut back exports of crude oil, refined oil products, steel, and other metals to its neighbor. The move is in line with tough sanctions the UN issued last month, aimed at stifling Pyongyang's missile program. Iranian state TV reported that thousands of people demonstrated in support of the government after Friday prayers, following the widespread anti-government protests that have shaken the country. During a sermon, Iran's senior cleric, Ahmed Hatami, blamed the United States and Israel for those protests, which have denounced both the Iranian president and Iran's religious leadership. Hatami also blamed the role of social media apps for fostering dissent. A Georgian court today sentenced former President Mikhail Saakashvili in absentia, giving him 3 years in prison for abusing his power when he pardoned 4 policemen convicted of murder in 2006. Saakashvili called the charge against him ridiculous. Georgia wants him extradited from Ukraine, where he's been living since 2014, and has gained popular support for calling out corruption. 2 Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham, are urging the Justice Department to investigate former British spy Chris Steele for lying about contacts with journalists. Steele is the author of the infamous Trump dossier, which helped raise alarm in the intelligence community about possible collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. The committee's referral appears to be part of a broad GOP effort to push back on what it sees as anti-Trump bias at the FBI. And that pressure campaign may be working. The Bureau has apparently revived an investigation of the Clinton Foundation, a major Republican demand.
We've made a lot of progress.
The owner of a sushi restaurant chain paid just over $323,000 today for an 890-pound bluefin tuna. It was the highest winning bid during the final New Year auction at the world's largest fish market in Tokyo. The Tsukiji market is moving locations later this year to make way for construction for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. In the market's 80-year history, a 489-pound bluefin tuna set the record sale in 2013 at $1.76 million.
And this is the only way onto and off the island?
That's it. This runs every 2 hours, both ways.
This island is where Washington State sends its worst and most dangerous sex offenders. They are deemed sexually violent predators, whose crimes and personality disorders are considered so extreme that they need to be separated from society. Bill Van Hook has been in charge here for almost 2 years.
So this is our central control room. This is where all the security operations are centralized and monitored.
And do people try and escape?
Very rarely. We haven't had anybody attempt it in years. It doesn't generally happen.
While this certainly looks like a prison, legally it's a treatment centre. But all 236 residents were sent here against their will, despite having already served their prison sentences elsewhere. And when they arrive, none of them have a release date.
We are the first civil confinement facility for sexually violent predators in the United States. It was established in 1991. People who have served their prison sentence are evaluated at the end of their sentence, and if they're evaluated to present a high risk of reoffending, they're referred to prosecution to have them committed for treatment at our facility.
Forced confinement facilities like this are legal for people with mental abnormalities who are considered high risk, and only if treatment is offered and if there is a chance of release. 19 other states have similar programs, and in 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that they were legal.
There's nobody here who walked in here and said, please pick me for civil commitment. And the way that they're now seeing the way to leave is, I've got to get involved in treatment, and that's how I'm going to get out.
That's the only way they're going to get out.
Well, they could go out by dying, which is not the preferred way, obviously. They can go out if they become so old and disabled that they no longer meet the criteria.
Justin, who asked that we only use his first name, began molesting children when he was a child himself. He was convicted at age 13 of first-degree child rape for molesting his half-sister for over a year. He spent 5 years in prison and 10 more years here on McNeil Island.
We're going to go to my room now, and I'm going to put my briefcase away, so.
And the briefcase and the suit, is that for us or is that for your attorney?
I always like to dress appropriately, so yeah. I'm very festive. I like decorating.
Like many sex offenders, Justin was himself abused. He was also diagnosed with ADHD and antisocial personality disorder.
I'm both a victim of a sexual assault and a physical assault. And I will tell you that it took forever for me to forgive myself for what I've done. I got my siblings, you know, who I victimized, and it's like, you know what? I have something to prove to them. I need to leave them a legacy and say, hey, you know what? Justin is not this bad person anymore.
So the predominant modality of treatment here is group therapy, but we also offer something called case management, which is up to an hour of individual therapy a month for each resident.
Elena Lopez is in charge of the treatment program, which aims to manage residents' compulsions to the point where they are no longer likely to reoffend.
This visual depiction helps them understand that certain things come from within inside ourselves and certain things are external to us that we still need to be mindful of.
So the aim is to manage their urges and instincts rather than get rid of them.
Absolutely. So the purpose of our treatment program is to manage their risk. It's not to eradicate or eliminate or get rid of, because most of our residents may always have a proclivity for deviance in some way, whether that's for children or non-consensual sex or other.
Justin, who has spent 19 years of his life incarcerated, eventually engaged with the treatment program and is now convinced he will not commit sex offences again.
And, you know, given the crimes you did commit, do you think you were born capable of committing those crimes?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So what do you think now, you know, made you capable of doing those things?
I would beg to ask the question, what led up to, you know, being in an environment where I felt hurt, where I felt angry, where I felt rejected.
But those are fairly common feelings for people to feel. You could feel those things again.
Of course I could, but now I have different ways of dealing with them, you know?
So you're managing your desires, your emotions, your reactions to situations. Yeah. Does that mean you still have desires about children?
No, I don't. And I don't. It's just, it's a weird thing. I mean, I don't have any urges towards children. I don't have any struggles about urges towards children. And I mean, I'm baffled, you know, because it's like, I just stopped thinking about it.
Whatever it was that worked, Justin has now convinced the state that he should be released. He's scheduled to get out later this year, with major restrictions and monitoring. Rachel Ford has represented Justin for 5 years. What benefit does McNeil Island actually offer?
No benefit at all. I mean, if the treatment is better on the outside, the opportunities to reintegrate into society are better on the outside, so there's no purpose. If our society gets together and says, we want life sentences for all sex offenders, then we should just be honest about that and say that and change our laws.
Good treatment has been proven to reduce reoffending rates, but 30 states deal with sex offenders without places like McNeil Island. There are no studies that show civil commitment is much more effective than community treatment. Wayne, who also asked that we only use a single name, repeatedly sexually assaulted young children and was convicted of child molestation and statutory rape. But after 13 years on the island, he's now been released unconditionally and is studying to be a social worker.
Are you still a paedophile today?
I don't see myself as a pedophile today.
You were convicted for multiple offences against children.
Yes.
Are you saying that at the time you had no idea what you were doing was wrong?
I always knew it was wrong, okay? But my desire for wanting a form of intimacy and love, even though I learned later that's not what it was. But growing up in the abused background, I had a lot of conflict of messages, which are lies we tell ourselves to justify our actions or our behaviors. And I thought it was the truth, that what I was doing was out of love.
You're definitely no longer a risk.
I feel that there's always potential for a risk based on what a person's done in their past, okay? But it's what we do to eliminate those risks. I don't come down here normally and hang out a park when I know there's kids around down here. This is a park that kids frequent during the summer because I don't even want the appearance. You know, the reality is people can change.
Even if serial child molesters can change, it will take a lot to convince the public that they are anything but monsters.
Do you think this will exist in, say, 5 years' time?
It'll be here for longer than now.
And do you think there'll ever be the political will to close it?
I don't know. It would be a tough sell.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics announced this morning that the U.S. economy added 148,000 jobs last month, and the unemployment rate stayed at 4.1%, ending a strong 2017 by many economic indicators. But the number that President Trump really wanted people to focus on this week was the record-breaking Dow Jones Industrial Average.
When the Dow broke 20,000 for the first time last year, the Trump administration rushed to suggest it was a taste of the sort of economic prosperity his presidency was going to bring to this country. Kellyanne Conway tweeted Trump effect. Eric Trump tweeted he's just getting started. And Donald Trump tweeted the word great. And the enthusiasm has only continued when the index broke 25,000 for the first time.
The stock market is up very, very big today. We've set new records, and I think they'll be continued to set.
But the 25,000 milestone isn't all that meaningful to most Americans because what happens in the stock market is increasingly disconnected from what's happening to them. Since the Great Recession, individuals have shied away from investing. In 2007, almost 2/3 of Americans said they had money in the stock market. But today, only a little over half say the same. And ownership is heavily skewed toward people who already have a lot of money. The richest 10% of Americans own more than 80% of all stocks. On top of that, stock prices have been going up, at least in part, because of something that has little to do with the underlying health of the US economy. Since 2009, companies have spent hundreds of billions of dollars buying back their own stock. That pushes prices up, but it mostly helps shareholders. And it's money that could have been spent on other things, like raising wages. So even though the market is soaring, it isn't generating long-term wealth for most members of the middle class, whose incomes are still relatively stagnant. The more than 5,000 points the Dow has gained this year aren't totally meaningless to Americans. It's helped increase the value of people's retirement accounts. But the market just isn't doing nearly as much for the average person as President Trump continues to suggest.
أزمة قاتلة يعني ما فيش حد خرج من البلاد هذه خلاص يعني انتهينا من هذا حرب قاتل مدمر يا حبيبي المدينة ما فيش حد عمل ما فيش عمل يعني هكذا مشاور مرة ما فيش مشوار تحصل تعبي دبه تلفه في الشارع ما فيش حد ناس ما فيش زبائن إنه في زبائن ما فيش خراج لا معانا ولا مع المواطن ما فيش حد خراج هذا كله بسبب الحرب.
Like millions of his fellow citizens, Sabir is feeling the brunt of being caught in a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. In 2014, in the early days of Yemen's civil war, the government stopped subsidizing fuel, nearly doubling prices overnight.
والله كنا من قبل نصرف الحمد لله كنا عايشين في نعمة.
But once Saudi Arabia intervened in 2015, it started implementing air, sea, and land blockades. The most severe tightening so far came this past November, after Saudi said Iran-backed Houthi forces fired a missile toward the capital Riyadh. That blockade, which was strongly criticized by the UN, burdened Yemen's crippled economy even more and sent oil prices soaring as much as 60%. Since November, Saudi Arabia partially lifted the blockade, but aid groups say that isn't enough.
الحصبة يا أخي. أين الحصبة؟ لا عند غرفة تجارية. كم تدي؟ أدي لك 600. لا. تدري إن الدبة البترول 8000 ولا ما تدري؟ إذا قريب. يا أخي تطلع ب 700. يلا بسم الله. تطلع ب 700 الله يديني شو اللي إحنا يلا. 600 تمام يا أخي. 600 تمام. أنت ما أنتش داري ب 600 أنت تكون العهد القديم. أنا داري إنه قريب أيوه. أنا داري إنه قريب لكن الدبة البترول بكام؟ 8000 ريال عديتها اليوم الصباح نص دبة ب 4000 ريال. 600 باقي 600 كذا قريب بالمسافة قريبة. باقي اتفقنا هي ما قد خلاص غيرت الراي 600 ما عاد فيش خرج الا كلام الله كلام من الصبح باقي 100 ريال. بلا لعبة بلا شيء.
For a country that imports 90% of its goods, this blockade has been catastrophic. Most stores are having trouble restocking food and have raised prices because of the high cost of fuel to transport it. Sabir can actually manage to buy some groceries. But 20 million Yemenis are currently relying on humanitarian aid, and meals are scarce.
Anyone who's watched Law & Order knows that when you go on trial, you're judged by a jury of your peers. But a case in Kansas right now is calling into question what exactly peers means. 3 men who called themselves the Crusaders were charged back in October 2016 for trying to bomb a Somali Muslim mosque in Garden City, Kansas. And now their lawyers say there's a problem with a pool of potential jurors. They're not conservative enough. The trial is set to start on March 19th at a federal courthouse in Wichita, and as is standard for the district court there, the jury pool is drawn from the people who live in the counties around Wichita and not from western Kansas, where the defendants are from and where they plan to attack. Their lawyers argue that the system for picking jurors is unfair to their clients because the jury pool isn't rural enough, and by that they mean not conservative enough. In a court filing, the lawyers argued their clients are having their constitutional right to a fair trial violated and that the current practice wholly discriminates against citizens who have more conservative political views. Here's the thing. In the area the jurors are currently drawn from, more than 60% voted for Trump. The more rural area that the defense attorneys prefer voted 75% for Trump. Laura Gaston Dooley is a law professor at Valparaiso University.
It's not unusual for litigators to try to control the pools from which their juries are drawn. The Sixth Amendment requires that juries be impartial. That's been interpreted to mean jurors drawn from a fair cross-section of the community. I think they're going to have a rough road to show that there's a technical violation of the Sixth Amendment.
The judge says he's going to rule soon on whether he'll grant the defense's request.
Most street artists are liberals, if not outright anarchists. But not all of them. In Los Angeles, artist Sabo has built a brand around pushing back on Hollywood. Vice News followed him as he prepared for his next big project.
Okay, what am I doing now? I really have to come up with a good concept for what's going on with the Golden Globes. We're in my studio. It's a 1-bedroom place in the South Bay. This is where I do my work. This is award season. There's no reason for me to not hit the Oscars and the Grammys and all those other fucking award shows. It's basically just them patting themselves in the back. I would like to think that everyone that's about to attend the Golden Globes is a little uncomfortable right now, because a lot of people in Hollywood did know what the hell was going on. If Meryl Streep, who like embraced him and even called him God, if she didn't know what was going on, then she's a dumb bitch. Back in the 2000 or 1999, I snapped. I turned on my television or my radio and they're telling me I'm a dick because I'm a Republican. I just said, so who are the Republican artists out there? There were none. I said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. I'm not even a conservative. I'm just not a leftist. I consider myself a right-leaning 1960s liberal. At the end of the day, we're really not defacing anything or hurting anything. We're just putting shit up. The whole point is to take photographs, document what we do, and then have it go viral, hopefully. What the fuck is going on? Over there, over there, over there. Carabiners out. Don't pull too hard. That's it. Don't trip on the rope. Screw that car behind us. Okay.
Hold on. Let him fix that.
We got all fucking day. Fuck, that's the best we can do, man. And that is a cop. Act like you know what you're doing. Oh shit, we're fucked. Now what do we do? Straighten as fast as you can go without breaking the law. Let's hope I know what I'm doing, because I only brought this. The reaction that I think I'm gonna get is Hollywood's scared to death right now. They don't know if they should be having a party or if they should be in mourning. And when this happens, I think they're gonna freak out. You pretty much crapped in their front door.
That's Vice News Tonight for Friday, January 5th.